And now I want to really engage you guys. I know you may have questions for me, but I want to throw out a few to you as well. So you've heard a little bit about US policy towards Pakistan. Let me back it up. And since 9/11, I've said it's been essentially pay to play. We've given a lot of aid. We've given almost $18 billion to Pakistan in military aid. We've given almost $10 billion to Pakistan in other aid, development aid. So very lopsided. 2/3 on the military side, 1/3 on the civilian side. So let me throw it out to you. How important is Pakistan to US national interests? Should we care? Should we start pulling out at this point? Yeah.
Care as long as we're involved in Afghanistan. I think we'll care. As long as we have troops and we're engaging in combat over there, I think Pakistan's going to be true.
Mm-hmm.
When we pull out of Afghanistan, I'm not sure how.
Okay. Yeah, right next to you.
I think we care in the context of Pakistan having nuclear weapons. If to care about Pakistan, security is going to go down because its nuclear weapons or nuclear materials could be kind of seized by groups that we wouldn't want to have.
Mm-hmm. So that extends beyond even if even a troop drawdown. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry, the lady behind you.
I kind of disagree. I think we can care as long as the Taliban are in Pakistan. I mean, we can leave Afghanistan, and as soon as we leave Afghanistan, that's fine. But as long as the Taliban are still in Pakistan, we have to resolve that either diplomatically or otherwise in Pakistan.
Right. Fine. Yeah.
I actually respectfully disagree with the first comment. I see this, let's just say that we don't make the deal with the future government after Karzai and withdraw suddenly, and Afghanistan left by itself. Afghanistan might actually reach out to Pakistan to try to strengthen those ties. And in that case, it would be very essential that we have good bonds with Pakistan and maintain our Pakistan.
Right. Good. Yeah. Right.
As long as Al-Qaeda has a safe haven in the federally administered tribal areas, we'll always have a military presence there because they'll probably be actively plotting against the United States.
Mm-hmm. Well, we may or we may not. The rumors today are otherwise, but yeah. Good.
Yeah, no, I think it's because of the nuclear materials that we'll always care about Pakistan, is because one of the biggest fears of the United States ever is terrorists getting a hold of a nuclear weapon. And I think that aside from maybe North Korea, the least secure nuclear weapons in the world are in Pakistan. So I think as long as the nuclear weapons are there, we do have an interest in preventing terrorists from seizing them.
Mm-hmm. Great. Let me just ask, how much time do I have? Till 10:50 or till 11? 10:50. Okay, great. Good. Well, that's great. So I hear everything from our interest there ends when U.S. troops are gone to we'll always have an interest there because of their nuclear weapons. We'll always have an interest there because you could very easily have terrorist safe havens again. That was the problem in the first place. So what do we think about the policy to get there? And I gave it to you in very general terms. It's a little bit more nuanced than that. Initially, it was really a lot of security aid. And as the 2000s, sort of in 2005, 2006, we realized that we needed to do a lot more on the civilian side in Pakistan as well. And then in 2009, our Congress actually did something that I think was very, very useful. The Kerry Lugar-Berman bill, which gave guaranteed $1.5 billion a year in civilian aid to Pakistan. So what do we think? Was it a good idea to pay the Pakistani military to be there? Should we have made our policy different? Should we have given less aid? Should we have been less naive? What should we have done differently? Yeah. Same thing.
There's been a lot of talk over the last few years to place conditions on aid to perhaps kind of instigate reform without just giving handouts. But I also understand kind of what the argument about too. But I think maybe more conditions on the aid could have led to more progress, which is Pakistan doesn't know.
And would you place conditions on the military side of the aid only, also the civilian?
Probably the military side of the aid, not the civilian side of the aid, considering I think a lot of the lack of cooperation has nothing to do with the civilian side, more to do with the military side.
Mm-hmm. Good. Yeah.
I don't think the aid was naive when we gave it. I think from they were doing and what the short-term goals were. However, it does appear, like also based on the previous discussion, that every time we give aid, we're sort of emphasizing we're rewarding the wrong things necessarily, insofar as when U.S. interest in Pakistan seems super tied to Pakistani insecurity, right? So when Pakistan does something in which its nukes aren't secure, or it has terrorists in it or something, that's when U.S. aid seems to surge up. So it seems that we're rewarding the wrong things insofar as it seems to be in Pakistan's long-term interest to keep as insecure as possible if it wants as much aid. Maybe there'd be a better way rather than aid, some sort of win-win trade or something like that. That would be perhaps a better long-term strategy, even if aid is a good tactic.
It's a good point. I don't know if everyone heard that. It seems, you said that it seems to be that our aid spikes when there's more insecurity created in Pakistan. So in a way, it creates the wrong incentives versus like a Millennium Challenge account model where you would say, if you're doing the right things, you will get more money. That hasn't really been the case so far. Yeah. It is also, there's this amazing chart that I use in the class that I teach, and it doesn't prove, it's not a causality chart, but it does show that US aid to Pakistan has, by chance, gone up substantially every time there's a military dictatorship. So it's a little problematic, exactly the point. Yeah, other thoughts on this? Is there ways we can make the aid more, does anyone think we should just stop giving aid? I mean, this is a lot of money. You're nodding.
It seems like a lot of money, and it hasn't been very effective, it sounds like, in promoting U.S. interests.
It hasn't been, no. It's very hard, and you have to get pretty granular into this, but despite sort of everyone's best efforts, a lot of the aid money doesn't actually ever, ordinary Pakistanis don't see a lot of it. A lot of it goes through the Pakistani government. Some is taken out by graft. Sometimes we have our own problems because everything has to go through numerous levels of contractors. So it's hard. It's a good point. Yeah.
How bad would it get if we stopped aid? I'm just curious about your opinion of what you think would happen and like how long that process would be if their policies changed.
I think if we sort of went cold turkey and we said, you know, Afghanistan, we're going to have 10,000 troops or we won't have any, we don't need you anymore, we're done. If that also has an impact on the IMF loan package, complete disaster. If it doesn't, if it's really just our civilian aid that's cut, $1.5 billion a year, I think it has a huge impact on Pakistan, not just economically, but on the psyche. Because in the Pakistani psyche, what you hear over and over again is, we did your bidding in the 1980s, and then you completely abandoned us in the 1990s. And this is what they're fundamentally worried about. And so from my personal opinion would be that it's well worth the $1 billion a year or wherever it is on the civilian side only to see if we can't create a more functioning state there. Because I think they're well on their way. And they shouldn't be punished for finally doing the right things. Yeah. Good. Other thoughts or questions for me? Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit more about the federally administered tribal areas and what exactly that
Yes.
entails?
Yeah, it's super complicated, and they keep renaming them. So if you look at, it's hard to see, Punjab, I'll just start with this big province here. Well, I think, can we keep the, yeah. This is probably the most developed part of Pakistan. Fairly wealthy, lots of big landowners. Lahore, that you see right there on the border of India, is a beautiful city. Like lots of intellectuals, fairly wealthy, gorgeous old palaces from the Mughal times. Islamabad, which is right on the border, is of course the capital, but also kind of a commercial hub. Then as you move north and west, it gets very quickly very poor. And the federally administered tribal areas, I told you about the background. In 2009, Zardari, this is one of the good things that he did, tried to change the laws there to make them less tribal justice and more integrated into the Pakistani state. So now you actually have a governor, like other states have governors. You have local political representation, which sounds pretty normal, but that was an innovation there. But you still have very few roads, and many of you that I see in the room have served there, but it's kind of amazing when you fly from here, well, when you fly over Afghanistan, basically no roads. When you fly from Kabul to Islamabad, you know when you're over Pakistan because there are some roads. On the border area between Kabul and sort of Peshawar, very little. But these areas are mule tracks, small, dusty villages, lots of militants, lots of the old tribal structure, frankly, broke down in the series of conflicts starting with the 1980s when all the money was flooding with the Mujahideen, both domestic and the internationals that were fighting there. And that continued in the 2000s. And so the traditional structure has broken down. I don't think you can say, and it sometimes appears that way from the US press, that these are all militants. Far from it, right? These are people who just want to live a normal life. But there are a few militants amongst our midst, and they use it pretty effectively. So that's the background on Fatah. Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, which is this province right next to it, is also occasionally problematic. So that's actually where I lived when I lived in Pakistan. It's a beautiful region. It reaches all the way up into the Himalayas. It has some militancy problems, especially in 2009. I think you heard that the militants overran the Swat Valley, which is, getting pretty close to the more populated areas of Pakistan. But those are the two provinces that when you talk about what are the problem areas in Pakistan, that's what we focus on.